Peter Newman is a professor at Curtin University Sustainability Policy Institute and a member of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. He joins me now live from Perth in Australia. Professor, great to see you. Good to have you here with us on TRT World. So the first question that I would like to ask you now is, why are we seeing fires in areas which are not used to wildfires?
Well, we had the same question in Australia with our bushfires 4 years ago, which were dramatically worse than anything we'd experienced before. And it's clearly global warming, or now we're calling it global boiling. The reality is we're putting 60,000 Hiroshima bombs of energy into the atmosphere every day because we're burning fossil fuels, and that's what they do. So we are responsible for this increased intensity and spread of these bushfires, especially now into settlements, evacuating settlements. That hasn't happened before, hardly.
Indeed, it's tragic to say the least what's happening in Canada right now and what happened in Hawaii over the past 2 to 3 weeks. Now, as you said, that what we are witnessing right now is a phenomenon called global boiling. How do you counter it?
Well, there's not much you can do about wildfires and even floods. The reality is this extra energy in the atmosphere can only be solved by global cooling. And that requires us to go net zero. As soon as we get rid of burning fossil fuels and create net zero situations, the world will begin to cool. We can prepare for fires and floods, but in the end, you can't stop them. They are such a big force. This one in Canada, the most symbolic thing is that it caused the evacuation of Fort McMurray, which is 90,000 people down in Alberta, which supports the worst polluting source of energy in the world, the oil tar sands, and that caught fire. So it was incredibly symbolic of what we've got to do. We've got to stop these fossil fuel sources. That's the only way to make a serious dent in global warming.
Right. And now, Professor, since you're also a part of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, I wonder if there is a timeline. How long before these wildfires is stopped? What do we need to do in the short run?
Yeah, well, it's really a short run now to get rid of fossil fuels to start with. So let's just say we get rid of all of them in 2050. We've got to get rid of half of them in 2030. That is just a few years away. We've got to get dramatic changes started now in that process. Nothing else matters more than that. But in the interim period, we've got to put a lot more money into the fire and emergency services side of our governments. We've got to train people. We've got to build things differently so they don't catch fire so easily. And we've got to actually recognise that if we're living in areas that have got a large amount of carbon that can burn, it's probably going to catch fire. This is a new awareness that we need to take on. We need to consider that this is no longer wet carbon that's not going to burn. It dries out very rapidly now, and it is going to catch fire, no matter where we live.
Professor Peter Newman, it's always a pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you very much for talking to us here on TRT World.